Hello. I'm Isla. I've spent my life being invisible, the one no one cared about, until they all decided I was worth something. But by then, it was too late. The hospital room I was trapped in, surrounded by nothing but cold machines and empty promises, was the last place I wanted to be. But this time, things would be different. This time, I was done being their afterthought. The sterile smell of the hospital room was overwhelming, but it wasn't the only thing making my stomach churn. The quiet beep of the monitor in the corner, the soft rustle of the nurses' shoes as they moved about, it all felt like a world I was trapped in, alone. I had just given birth. The pain still lingered, a dull reminder of how quickly life could shift, and how much had already changed. And yet, here I was, lying in a bed with a small bundle in my arms, the weight of the moment sinking in, not from the exhaustion or the relief of finally meeting my son, but from the emptiness around me. My phone buzzed on the bedside table, and I reached out for it, my hands still trembling. The first message was from my mom. "Can't make it right now, dear, we're out buying Callista's car. You can handle everything, right?" A wave of nausea washed over me. I couldn't breathe for a second, the cold hospital air choking me, as I read the text again. My parents, busy buying a car for my sister with the money I'd given them, while I was here, alone, having just brought a life into the world. My own family had left me to handle this moment by myself. I tried calling. No answer. Another message popped up from my sister, "On our way, sorry we couldn't be there. Hope everything's okay." I should have expected it. Callista, always the golden child. Always the one who mattered. I was just the one who cleaned up after her messes, after their messes, never really seen for who I was or what I gave up. I felt tears sting the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them away. The pain of childbirth wasn't the worst pain I was feeling. The worst pain was the realization that my family was still treating me like I didn't exist. I had given so much, always been the responsible one, and now I was being erased. The sound of footsteps outside my door brought me back to the present. I stared at the sterile white walls of the room. The world outside was moving forward, and here I was, stuck in this hospital room, as alone as I'd ever been. I hadn't always felt this way, but it had built up slowly over the years. The moments where my parents' praises for Callista were louder than any acknowledgement they ever gave me. The holidays where I was the one left to clean up, while Callista was the one wrapped in gifts and attention. I was the quiet one. The one who made everything work, who kept everything from falling apart. But I was done. Done being invisible. Done being the person everyone could rely on, only to be left behind. I stood up, my legs a bit shaky from the delivery, but I didn't care. I needed to move. I walked slowly to the window, the cold glass pressing against my palms as I looked outside. I could see the world bustling below, people walking, living, moving forward. And then I looked back at the empty room behind me, the stark contrast between the vibrant life outside and the desolation inside. I hadn't been forgotten. I'd been erased. For the first time, the thought didn't scare me. It empowered me. I turned away from the window and sat back down, feeling a quiet rage build inside me. This was it. This was the moment I was going to make my stand. I wasn't going to be the one they always abandoned, the one they could push aside while they got what they wanted. The phone buzzed again. My mother, of course, calling now. I ignored it. But her number blinked on the screen, and the familiar sound of the ringtone felt almost like a whisper of the past, begging me to fall back into my old role. For a long time, I had been the one who cleaned up their messes. The one who sacrificed. The one who was always good enough when they needed me. But not anymore. I stood up again, moving to the desk. I typed a message, my fingers steady as I typed the words that felt like an anchor to my soul. "I can't keep doing this. I've always been here for you, but now it's my turn to live for me." I sent the message. A single breath escaped me, like I had been holding it in for years. I felt a weight lift off my chest. The phone vibrated again, but I didn't look at it. I knew it was them. It didn't matter anymore. I had made my decision. This wasn't going to be the life I was going to live. Not anymore. They didn't get it. They thought I would always be there, cleaning up their messes, making things okay for them. But I wasn't going to be the one they left behind anymore. I stared at the message, the words still fresh on the screen. I'm done being the one they leave behind. It's my turn to make a stand. I hadn't expected it to hurt like this. Sitting at my desk, The glow from my laptop was the only light in the room, illuminating the Forbes 30 Under 30 article that had just been published. There, in black and white, was my name. Isla Hayes, an achievement I had fought for, one that was supposed to feel like victory. But instead, there was a weight on my chest, an ache I couldn't shake. I closed the laptop slowly, still staring at the glowing screen as if it held some sort of answer to the questions swirling in my mind. I had worked my ass off to get here, hell, I'd given up so much of myself to prove I was worth something, but why did it still hurt? My hands hovered over the keyboard for a moment, wanting to open the article again and read it over, needing the reassurance that this was real, that I had truly made it. But I didn't. Instead, I pushed the laptop aside and gazed out of the window, my eyes tracing the lights of the city below. The streets were busy, people moving, living their lives. And here I was, alone, fighting against the emptiness that came with success when you had no one to share it with. I felt the familiar weight of betrayal in my chest. I couldn't help but wonder, why hadn't they come? Why hadn't my family been there for me when I needed them? Why had I been the one left behind? My thoughts wandered to that phone call, that first text from my mom, telling me she couldn't be there. They had bought Callista's car with the money I'd given them. There was a bitter taste in my mouth. Callista, my younger sister, who never had to work for anything, who always came first. She always mattered more. The lump in my throat tightened, and for a moment, I wondered if it would ever go away. If I'd ever stop feeling like the second choice in my own family. But no. I was done. I had to be done. This wasn't just about being ignored anymore. This was about reclaiming everything I had given up for them, for a family that had never once appreciated me for who I was. It was time to make a change. It was my time to fight back. The apartment was quiet, save for the hum of the city below, but I couldn't ignore the battle going on inside me. I stood up and paced for a moment, trying to shake off the weight of my thoughts, before I finally made my way to the kitchen. I opened the fridge, grabbing a bottle of water, but the taste of regret was still on my tongue. I hadn't felt anger like this in a long time. It was like a fire had started deep inside of me, one I couldn't put out. I had spent years sacrificing myself, always the one who was expected to take the blame, to pick up the pieces, to make things right for everyone else, but never getting anything in return. All the while, Callista coasted along, never held to the same standards. The familiar thought rang out in my mind, I'd been erased. I thought back to all those years of being the reliable one, the one who kept it all together, even when I was barely holding on. Every time my parents praised Callista for her beauty or her latest achievement, I'd swallowed it down, telling myself it didn't matter. But it did. It always had. I wasn't just the responsible one. I was never enough. I wasn't going to keep living like this. I wasn't going to keep playing their game and pretending that their love was worth the sacrifice. No more. I turned back to the living room, my feet moving faster now. My phone lay on the coffee table, and as if by reflex, I picked it up and scrolled through the messages that had come in from my parents, from my sister. Apologies, excuses, their usual pleas for forgiveness, as if nothing had ever happened, as if they hadn't just left me in that hospital room, abandoned at the most vulnerable moment of my life. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of a response. Not this time. Not anymore. The decision was made. I needed to cut ties. I needed to free myself from their expectations. I walked back to my desk, my thoughts clear now, my resolve stronger than it had been in years. I sat down and typed up a message. The words came easily this time, almost like I'd been writing this letter to them in my head for years. I can't keep doing this. I've always been there for you, but I can't keep sacrificing myself for your mistakes. I'm not your cleanup crew anymore. I'm living for myself now. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The weight in my chest didn't go away, but something else filled its place, relief. I had just sent my family a message that was years in the making. But now, it was my turn. I wasn't going to be the one they used anymore. I wasn't going to let them push me around. I wasn't going to be ignored. The phone buzzed a few seconds later. I looked at it, but I didn't answer. I didn't need to hear their voices, not now. Not anymore. I walked over to the window again, looking out at the city below. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was looking out at something I couldn't have. I didn't feel stuck anymore. I was free. The phone buzzed again. I picked it up and looked at the screen. It was my mom, again. The words I had been afraid to say for years were now out in the open. The distance between my family and me was finally real. And that realization, that rejection, had never felt so good. I let the phone ring until it stopped, staring at the screen as if willing my mother to stop calling, stop apologizing, stop trying to pretend everything was okay when it was clearly not. But the truth was, I wasn't ready to answer just yet. Not because I wasn't curious to hear what they had to say, but because I wasn't sure if I was ready to face them. To hear the same tired excuses. The same rehearsed lines. They were desperate, I knew it, but I wasn't sure if it was because they wanted to fix things, or because they just wanted to use me again. The soft glow from my phone screen contrasted sharply with the silence in the room. The golden light from the sunset filtered through the window, but it did little to chase away the cold that had settled in my chest. It was a strange feeling, one I had never experienced before. A mix of guilt and pride, sadness and relief. For the first time in my life, I was standing at a crossroads, not just in the literal sense, but in a way that made me feel like the whole of my existence had led me to this very point. I stood up slowly, my legs still not quite used to the weight of the decision I had just made. I didn't know how long I had been sitting there, maybe hours, but I felt like I had been stuck in a long, drawn-out moment, trying to force my mind to accept something I had been too afraid to acknowledge. I couldn't go back. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I wasn't just rejecting them in the moment. I was rejecting everything they had ever told me about myself, about my role in the family. The dutiful daughter, the one who always put everyone else first, the one who cleaned up everyone else's mess, even if it meant losing pieces of herself in the process. Now, I was done. Done letting them use me, done letting them make me feel small. For the first time in my life, I was free to decide who I was, and who I wanted to be. My phone buzzed again. The same number. I didn't need to check it. I already knew who it was. Mom. But instead of answering, I let it ring through to voicemail. I didn't need to hear any more of their lies. I didn't need to hear how sorry they were, how they never meant to hurt me. I didn't want to hear that. I didn't care. I stared at the screen for a moment longer, wondering if I was making the right choice. It felt like a lifetime's worth of hurt had come crashing down in this single moment. And yet, despite the sadness that clung to my bones, there was a deep, unshakable feeling inside me that this was the only way forward. I was tired of being the person they wanted me to be. It was time to be the person I needed to be. The apartment, once a place of comfort, now felt empty. Not just in the physical sense, but emotionally too. I had built so many memories here, but I realized that those memories were no longer mine to keep. They didn't belong to me anymore. I walked to the window, looking out over the city, feeling strangely detached from everything. The buildings, the cars, the people moving about their busy lives, it all felt so far away. As if I were a stranger looking at someone else's life. A part of me wanted to run away, leave everything behind, but another part of me knew that this was the place where I would start fresh. I didn't need them. I didn't need their validation, their approval. I could build something for myself. I could take back everything they had made me believe wasn't mine to have. I took a deep breath. For the first time in years, I wasn't worried. I wasn't afraid. I was free. My phone buzzed again. This time, I didn't hesitate. I picked it up and swiped the screen, dialing the number I knew I had to call. My lawyer's number flashed on the screen, and I clicked it without thinking. As soon as he picked up, I spoke quickly, my voice steady but firm. I need to take action. I want everything on the table. I'm ready to move forward with the legal battle. The voice on the other end was quiet for a moment, probably surprised by the sudden determination in my tone. Are you sure, Isla? He asked, his voice gentle but pressing. Once we start, there's no turning back. I didn't need to think. I knew what I had to do. I'm sure. It's time to fight for what's mine. After the call ended, I felt a strange calm settle over me. It was as if a piece of me I had long buried had been unearthed, and now I was walking forward with strength I hadn't known I had. I set the phone down on the counter and glanced around the apartment. It felt like the first time I had seen it with clear eyes. For the longest time, this place had been my prison. But now, it felt like the starting point for something new. The sun dipped lower, casting a warm orange light over everything. I could feel the weight of the day lifting off my shoulders. I had taken control. I turned and walked toward the window again, looking out over the city one last time. For the first time in my life, I wasn't watching the world pass me by. I was finally a part of it. A few moments passed, and then my phone buzzed once more. I didn't need to look. I knew who it was. It was my mother, again. I felt a strange stillness in my chest as I stared at the screen. The decision had already been made. I didn't need to hear her apologies anymore. I stared at the phone screen for a few seconds longer, the vibration buzzing softly under my fingers. Part of me wanted to pick it up, answer the call, hear my father's voice pleading for forgiveness. But I knew that if I did, I'd be stepping back into the cage I had spent years trying to escape. It wasn't just a family call anymore. It was a test. A final test. The final pull of the old me. I took a deep breath, letting it out slowly, grounding myself. The warmth from the setting sun outside filled the apartment, a bittersweet reminder of the day slipping away, the world moving forward without me. But I wasn't going to let my past hold me anymore. Not today. The phone buzzed again. This time, I didn't hesitate. I picked it up and swiped to answer. His voice came through, laced with desperation, as if he had practiced every word. Isla, we need to talk. We've made mistakes, but you're our daughter. We're asking for a chance to fix things. The weight of his words pressed against my chest like a vice, and for a moment, my heart stuttered. There it was again. The same old tactic. Manipulation disguised as love. I felt my hands tense around the phone. His words were familiar, and so was the ache that followed. The thought that I might give in. But then, I remembered. I couldn't go back. I let the silence stretch. The words burned in my throat. I opened my mouth, but all I could say was, no. You can't fix this. Not anymore. I heard him inhale sharply on the other end, the sound of him swallowing his pride. But Isla, you're still family. His words echoed in my head like a sickening loop. Family. The word that had held me hostage for years. The word that made me feel like I had to give, even when there was nothing left to give. I had played my part for so long. I sat at the table, the phone now heavy in my hand, weighing me down. The table between us now felt like the distance I had finally created. The divide that I had been too afraid to acknowledge for years. You never understood, did you? I said quietly, feeling the anger slowly rise to the surface. You never understood what you did to me. You used me. You took and I gave. Over and over, and I was left with nothing. I've been invisible for so long, and I'm done. My heart hammered in my chest. Done. That was the word. And for the first time, it didn't scare me. It felt like freedom. I hung up the phone without waiting for a response. My hands shook, but not from fear. From relief. I had done it. I had set the boundary that had been missing for years. The years of trying to fit into their mold, to meet their expectations, to make them love me. I was done. But my mind raced. My father's voice still echoed in my head, that desperate plea, his tone so familiar, so pleading. How had I let it get this far? Why had I waited until this moment to finally take control? I looked around the room, as if it would somehow offer me an answer. But there was no going back now. I was no longer the quiet, obedient daughter. I was the woman who had decided to reclaim her life. The sun had dipped below the horizon, and the light in the apartment grew softer. The warmth that had filled the room was now replaced by a stillness that settled over me, almost comforting in its quiet. The quiet before the storm. The storm I had unleashed when I decided to speak my truth. I moved to my desk, opened my laptop, and began typing. The words flowed easily now, no longer hesitant. I've done enough for you. I've given everything I had, and I have nothing left to offer. I'm done being the one you rely on when it's convenient for you. I'm moving forward, and this time, I'm living for myself. I stared at the screen for a moment, the words still fresh in my mind. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I read it again. The sentence wasn't just a message to them. It was a promise to myself. A promise that I was done being the person everyone wanted me to be, and I was going to be the person I needed to be. I hit send. The phone buzzed again. My mother. I stared at it. This time, the urge to pick it up, to hear her voice, was almost overpowering. But I resisted. I couldn't do this anymore. I wasn't going to fall into their trap again, no matter how much they tried to guilt me into submission. The weight of their expectations had been crushing me for years, and now, I had broken free. I silenced the phone and set it down on the counter. I walked to the window again, this time with a different feeling in my chest. There was no more uncertainty. There was no more waiting for them to change, to finally see me for who I was. There was only me. The city spread out before me, the lights twinkling in the distance, full of possibilities. For the first time, I felt like I was part of it. I had created this space for myself, and I was finally able to breathe in it. I let the quiet of the room settle around me, a peacefulness I had never known before. The world continued on, just as it always had. But now, I was part of it. And I would never let them make me feel small again. The apartment felt heavier somehow. The soft hum of the city outside was now drowned by the noise in my head, the weight of the decision I had just made pressing down on me. My eyes were drawn to the phone on the counter, the screen still glowing from the last call, but the urge to pick it up was gone. I had made my choice. But somehow, the silence that followed felt louder than anything else. I walked over to my desk, the laptop still open, and stared at the email from my lawyer again. The family's attempts to regain control of my finances, the constant manipulation of legal loopholes, they had never stopped trying to bury me. But this time, I wasn't going to let them. I had spent too many years being their safety net, too many years pretending their love was enough. Now, I was fighting for what was mine, my business, my freedom, and my peace of mind. I leaned against the desk, closing my eyes for a moment, allowing the anger to surface. The betrayal I felt was thick, almost suffocating. I had always been the one to clean up their mess, the one to fix what was broken. But this was different. I wasn't cleaning up anymore. I was standing my ground. My phone buzzed again. The caller ID made my stomach tighten. It was from my mother. I didn't answer. Instead, I let the phone sit there, mocking me with its vibration, the final link to my past. The flashbacks came flooding back like a wave, and for a moment, I wasn't in the present. I was back in that dining room, the one with the cracked table that we all sat around, pretending to be a family. I remembered the nights my parents spent praising Callista, her perfect grades, her beauty, her effortless life. And then there was me, always being told, "You're the responsible one. We need you to be the strong one. Callista needs more support." More support. For the one who didn't even try. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I never did. I was always the one who kept it together, even when there was nothing left to hold. Even when they didn't even notice I was there. I didn't want their pity anymore. I didn't want their empty praise. I had spent my whole life proving that I was good enough, but it never mattered. Not to them. They couldn't even see me. I shook my head, clearing the memory. That was the past. This was now. I walked over to the kitchen table and picked up the phone. For a second, I almost dialed my mother's number. Part of me still craved the validation, the apology that had never come. But the other part of me, the part that had spent too many years hoping for something I wasn't going to get, knew better. I wasn't going to let them back in, not this time. I wasn't going to let them pretend everything could go back to normal. I opened my email again and began typing. The words were cold, factual, and decisive. I had to be. This wasn't a game anymore. This was my life, and if I didn't fight for it, no one else would. I've had enough. I'm done trying to fit into your mold. I've spent my whole life being your backup, but no more. I won't let you control me anymore. I'm taking control of my own future. There it was. My first real step in taking back my life. No more apologies. No more excuses. I clicked send. The phone buzzed once more. I glanced at it. My mother again. I didn't answer. I had nothing left to say. It was strange, how freeing that felt. For so long, I had been terrified of losing them, of not being part of the family anymore. But now? Now, I felt stronger than I had in years. This was the first time in my life that I wasn't playing the role of the dutiful daughter, the one who always forgave, the one who always fixed things. I wasn't her anymore. I sat down, my legs suddenly weak from the emotional storm I had just weathered. The room around me felt different now, brighter, clearer, like a weight had been lifted. It was almost surreal, the sense of freedom that washed over me. But it didn't last long. The reality was creeping back in, and I knew this was just the beginning. My family wasn't going to let me go without a fight. They wouldn't just let me walk away. They would come after me. But I was ready. The phone buzzed again, and I grabbed it, my fingers trembling. The message was from my lawyer. I read it quickly. Isla, we've received some movement from your family's lawyers. They're pushing harder now. You need to prepare for a full legal battle. This is getting serious. My heart skipped a beat. I knew it was coming, but I couldn't stop the wave of fear that rushed through me. They were coming. And they were going to try to tear me down. But I couldn't back down now. Not after everything I had done to get here. I took a deep breath and opened my laptop, ready to face whatever came next. This wasn't just about fighting for my money or my business anymore. This was about fighting for my soul. For my peace. For the life I had spent so long dreaming about. I couldn't let them take it away from me. Not now. Not ever again. The phone rang again. The same number. I didn't need to look at it. The name that flashed on the screen, my mother's, had become as familiar as the weight of a stone lodged in my chest. The number of times I had let that phone call go unanswered, I had lost count. But this time, this call. It felt different. It felt like a last-ditch attempt. A final plea to reel me back in. I stood frozen in front of the window, my fingers still holding the phone. The city outside buzzed with life, but it all felt so distant, almost out of reach. I could see people walking, cars driving by, their lives moving forward while I felt as though I were suspended in this moment. It had taken me so long to get to this point. To finally find the courage to stand on my own. But it didn't make the decision any easier. The pull of family, the ties that bound me, were stronger than I had ever realized. Taking a deep breath, I swiped to answer the call. My heart was pounding, but I refused to let my fear take over. This had to end. One way or another. Isla, my mother's voice cracked, a tremor in her words. Isla, we've made a terrible mistake. Please, we need to talk. You're breaking our hearts. Callista is worried about you. We all are. My fingers tightened around the phone, but I said nothing. The words had a strange effect on me, a flicker of guilt stirring inside, but I knew, I had to resist it. This wasn't about love. This was about control. And I was done. She continued, you can't just walk away from everything. You know how much we've sacrificed for you, how hard we've tried to make things work. You're part of this family, Isla. You can't just abandon us. I felt a flicker of anger, a flash of heat in my chest. How dare she? How dare she stand there and act like she had ever cared? All these years, I had been the one holding everything together, trying to make them proud, trying to prove that I was good enough. And now, after everything, she thought I was the one who abandoned them? No, I finally said, my voice steady, but fierce. You don't get to say that. Not after everything. You never understood what you did to me. You used me. You manipulated me for years. I'm done. There was silence on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. I had lived my whole life believing I was nothing more than a supporting character in everyone else's story. It wasn't just about the money or the car or the material things they always asked me for. It was about the fact that they never saw me. They never cared about my happiness. My needs were always secondary to Callista's. I'm done, I repeated, my voice colder now, resolute. I'm not the person you can manipulate anymore. I'm not your backup, your safety net, your cleanup crew. I'm not that girl anymore. The silence stretched on. It was thick, heavy. For a moment, I thought she might say something else, beg me to come back, to forgive her. But the truth was, I didn't want to hear it. There was nothing she could say to change what had been done. I hung up the phone without another word, the click of the line disconnecting reverberating in my ear. The weight lifted. I turned away from the window, letting out the breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The room felt different. More spacious. More alive. The decision I'd made, no matter how difficult, was right. It was the only one I could make. I wasn't going to live the rest of my life like this. I picked up my phone again. For a brief second, I thought about calling my lawyer. I knew things were about to get ugly. I had no illusions about that. My family wasn't going to just let me go quietly. But I had to be ready. I had to take the final step in this battle, because there was no turning back now. Before I could dial, another message popped up. It was from my sister. Isla, I know you're angry. Please. I don't know what's happening, but we need to talk. Mom and Dad are falling apart. Please come back. We're family. The word stung, like a slap across the face. Callista was good at this. She knew exactly what to say to make me feel guilty, to make me question my decisions. But I couldn't fall for it. I wouldn't. I didn't even bother to respond. I couldn't keep playing this game. Not anymore. I grabbed the envelope that had been sitting on my desk all day. I had meant to open it earlier but hadn't gotten around to it. I tore it open, half expecting some kind of final apology or perhaps a note trying to lure me back into their fold. But what I found inside was worse, a check. A check with a note that said, "We're sorry, Isla. Please come back to us. We miss you." The check wasn't just money. It was everything they had used me for. It was a desperate attempt to buy me back. I scoffed, tearing it up and letting the pieces fall into the trash. I wasn't their pawn anymore. I wasn't the one they could control with a simple gesture of charity. I wrote my letter to them, one last time. The words were sharp, cold, and final. "I'm done. I've made my peace, but I'm moving on without you. You've used me for far too long, and I will not continue to let you. I deserve better than this, and I will never be your safety net again." I signed it with the same determination I had used to reclaim my own life. I had finally made my stand, and I was ready to walk away. The phone buzzed again. Another call from my family. This time, I didn't even look at it. I walked over to the window again, looking out at the city beneath me. There was a sense of peace now. I wasn't bound by my family's expectations anymore. I had done what I needed to do. The road ahead was unwritten, but it was mine. I stood at the edge of everything I had worked for, staring at the papers spread out in front of me, each one a reminder of just how much was at stake. The phone, which had been sitting on my desk, buzzed again. I knew who it was. My family, always with their excuses, always with their manipulations. But now, I had done what I needed to do. I had sent my message. I had made the final decision. Yet, the feeling in the pit of my stomach didn't go away. This was the moment that would define everything. No more second guessing. No more playing by their rules. The phone buzzed again, its screen lighting up with my mother's name. I ignored it. It was a battle I wasn't willing to fight anymore. The air in the room was heavy, even though the late afternoon sun poured through the window, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch endlessly across the floor. The storm outside had started to rumble, distant and angry, much like the storm that was about to break within me. This was the calm before the storm, the last chance I had to take a deep breath before stepping into the mess I had created, or perhaps the mess my family had created, forcing me into this position. I sat down at my desk, the weight of the papers in front of me almost too much to bear. They represented everything, my business, my freedom, the life I had worked so hard to build. But the path to this point hadn't been easy, and it wasn't going to get any easier. This battle was far from over. And I wasn't going to lose. The first few moments felt almost surreal. I thought about all the ways my family had tried to hold me back, the constant phone calls, the subtle manipulations, the guilt they tried to push onto me. They had tried everything. And I had given in, over and over again, hoping things would change. But now? I wasn't that girl anymore. I wasn't the one who cleaned up after everyone else's messes. I wasn't the one who lived in the shadows. I wasn't the one who sacrificed my life just so they could live theirs. The phone buzzed again. My mother's name still staring back at me. I grabbed it, a part of me wanting to hear her out, to give her one last chance to explain, to make everything right again. But I knew better. I was done. I pressed the green button. "Isla," her voice was soft, almost pleading. "We've made a mistake. We need to talk. We're so proud of you. Please, come home. Callista misses you. You can't just leave us like this." Her words were like a dagger, each one digging deeper into the wound she had created. The guilt tried to creep in, just like it always did, but I stopped it. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. This was the same old song and dance. Same words, different day. I closed my eyes for a second, took a deep breath, and said, "No. You don't get to say that. Not anymore." My voice cracked slightly, but I didn't let it falter. "You never understood me, never truly saw me for who I am. You used me, and I let you. But that ends now." The silence on the other end was deafening. I could almost hear her sigh, the weight of the truth settling on her, but it was too late. I had finally broken free. I had no room in my life for their guilt, for their apologies that came too late. I heard her voice again, quieter now. "Isla, please. We're family. We can fix this. We can make it right." But the sickness I felt in my stomach, the burning anger that surged through me, told me all I needed to know. They couldn't fix anything. They hadn't even tried before. They never truly tried. It was always about what they wanted, what they needed. Never about me. No, I said firmly, I'm done. I'm done with all of this. I'm not your backup anymore. I'm not the one you turn to when it's convenient. I hung up the phone before she could say another word. My chest tightened as I sat back in my chair. The weight of the phone call still lingered, but now there was something else, empowerment. The room felt heavier now, the calm before the storm settling around me. I was alone in this, but for the first time, I didn't feel like I was suffocating. The air seemed clearer somehow. The freedom I had been fighting for was finally within my grasp. I stood up, walked over to the desk, and pulled open a drawer. There it was, the envelope I had been avoiding for days. The final legal documents. The papers that would sever the last ties to my past. The check from my family still sat on the counter, a symbol of their attempt to buy me back, to drag me back into their world. I shredded it, not even a second thought. I wasn't their puppet anymore. I grabbed the legal documents and stared at them, the words on the page no longer feeling like a burden. They were my path forward, the proof that I was taking back control of my life. It was time to stop running. Time to stop hiding behind their expectations. I sat back down, signed the papers, and with each stroke of the pen, I felt the weight lift off my shoulders. The phone rang again. I didn't look at it. This time, it wasn't her. It was the lawyer. I took a deep breath before answering, knowing what was coming. We've got a case. They're really pushing hard, he said, his voice calm but serious. We'll need to move quickly if we're going to win this. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I'm ready, I said. Let's do it. The reality of what was happening hit me in waves. It wasn't just a legal battle anymore. It was the fight for my freedom, for my life. This was it, the final step. The final stand. The phone buzzed again, a sound that had become far too familiar in the past few weeks. This time, I didn't hesitate. My thumb swiped the screen without a second thought, the coldness of the glass pressing against my fingertip, as if the physical sensation could ground me in this moment. My heart pounded, the rhythm erratic, but there was something different now. Something stronger. It was as though, with that one simple swipe, I had crossed an invisible line. I wasn't just reacting anymore, I was in control. The email from my lawyer had left me with a strange sense of calm confidence, but the truth still lingered in the back of my mind like a shadow, stretching longer as the day wore on. My family's last-ditch attempt to regain control of my business, it wasn't over. I knew this wasn't just about money or assets anymore. This was about power. This was about who owned my life. And for the first time in years, I was ready to take it back. I sat at my desk, the room bathed in the soft glow of the early morning light. The rays filtered through the window, casting long shadows that seemed to mock me, reminding me that even in the light, there was darkness. It felt like the calm before a storm. The weight of the decision I had made, and everything that was about to come, pressed heavily on me. I had made up my mind, but the finality of it still felt like a burden I wasn't sure I was fully prepared to carry. Yet there was no turning back now. The decision had already been made, and I had to see it through. I stared out the window, watching the city below. People rushed by, moving quickly in their own little worlds, unaware of the storm brewing inside me. The streets were busy, bustling with the usual rhythm of a city that never seemed to slow down. Yet, for the first time, I felt outside of it all. This was my final battle, my last stand, and I had never been more certain of anything in my life. I had fought for so long, tried so hard to prove I was worthy of my family's approval, to show them I wasn't just the responsible one. I had spent years being the one they could rely on, the one who did everything they needed, but never the one they truly saw. I was always the backup, the one who picked up the pieces when everything else fell apart. But not anymore. Not today. Today, I was taking control of my life. I wasn't going to be anyone's fallback anymore. Not theirs. Not anyone's. The phone buzzed again, pulling me from my thoughts, but this time, I didn't even flinch. I knew it was them. I knew it was my family, trying to break through the walls I had spent so long building. I couldn't let them in anymore. I wouldn't. I reached for the envelope that had been sitting on my desk for the last few hours. It was a check from my parents, my mother's desperate plea written in bold, pleading letters. Please, Isla, come back. You're our daughter. We're sorry. We miss you. I couldn't bring myself to open the envelope. I had seen it all before, empty gestures, half-hearted apologies, promises that meant nothing. They had used these same tactics for years, trying to buy my love, my forgiveness. They couldn't buy me anymore. Not with money. Not with promises. Not with anything. With shaking hands, I grabbed the check, crumpled it into a tight ball, and threw it into the trash. It wasn't just about the money. It was the symbol of everything they thought they could control, but not anymore. I wasn't their scapegoat, their emotional pawn, their fallback. Not now. Not ever again. I pulled open a drawer and found the legal documents I had been avoiding. The papers were heavy with consequence, the ink that would make everything final. The decision I was about to make would change everything. It would be the final step in the journey I had started so long ago, the journey of breaking free from everything I had been forced into, from everything they had expected me to be. This was my moment. As I signed the papers, I felt a wave of empowerment wash over me. It was like a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I had finally found the courage to claim what was mine. I wasn't going to let them take it from me anymore. Not the house, not the business, not my life. I wasn't just signing away my past, I was signing away the power they had over me. The ink was final. The decision was made. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe again. It wasn't relief, not entirely. There was a sting in my chest, a lingering sense of loss. But it wasn't the kind of loss I had known for so many years. It was the kind of loss that comes from choosing yourself, from walking away from everything you once thought mattered. There was a freedom in that loss, and for the first time, I embraced it. I grabbed my phone, the screen glowing in my hand, and opened a new message. My fingers hovered over the screen, uncertain for a moment. What could I possibly say to them now? But then, the words came easily, as if they had been building inside me for so long, waiting to escape. I can't keep doing this. I've spent years trying to make you see me, to make you love me. But I can't live like this anymore. I'm done. I'm done letting you control me. I'm finally choosing me. I hit send, and the weight that had been hanging over me for so long seemed to lift, just a little. It was as if I had taken a piece of the burden that had defined my life for so long and set it down. It wasn't gone, not yet. But it was lighter. The phone buzzed immediately, and I stared at it with a mixture of fear and resolve. I didn't need to check. I already knew it was my family again, trying to break through, trying to make me feel guilty, trying to pull me back into the same toxic cycle. I didn't answer. The day wore on, and the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the apartment. For the first time in a long time, it felt different. The apartment, once filled with the remnants of my past, now felt like a place of my own. Brighter. More like mine. I moved away from the desk, walking to the kitchen, then to the living room. The silence wasn't oppressive anymore. It wasn't the silence of isolation, but the silence of freedom. I stood in front of the window, the city stretching out before me, and for the first time, I felt a sense of possibility. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but it was mine to walk. I was no longer walking in the shadows of my family, no longer bound by their expectations or their control. I was doing this for me. I had finally stepped out of the shadows, out of their lives, out of their manipulation. I wasn't their supporting character anymore. I was the lead in my own story. The phone buzzed once more, pulling me from my thoughts. Another call. I glanced at the screen. It was from my lawyer. I didn't hesitate this time. "This is it," I said, answering quickly, my voice steady. "I'm ready. Let's move forward." I stood by the window, the cool morning air mingling with the warmth of the sunlight streaming through the blinds. The apartment felt lighter today. Brighter. The weight that had been hanging over me for so long, the weight of my family's expectations, their control, their manipulations, had finally been lifted. It was the first day in a long while that I could breathe without feeling the pressure of what came before. The city sprawled out below me, a reminder that life never stopped moving. The hustle and bustle below, the people rushing to get to work, the cars honking, the sounds of the world I had once felt so disconnected from, it was all moving forward. But I was moving forward too. I had made my peace, and that meant more than anything else. It was time to let go of the past. I took a deep breath, my hands resting on the windowsill as I stared out at the cityscape. There was so much I had lost in the fight, so much I had left behind, but I had gained something too. I had gained freedom. Freedom to be myself, to make my own choices, to build my own future. And yet, the scars of betrayal still lingered in my chest. My family's actions, their endless attempts to control and manipulate me, had left their mark. I knew that true healing would take time, but today was a step in the right direction. I had spent so many years trying to prove myself to them. Trying to earn their love, their approval. I had sacrificed myself for a family that would never see me for who I truly was. For years, I had convinced myself that if I just did enough, gave enough, I would finally be seen. But that wasn't love. It was control. And for the first time, I understood it. I understood that I wasn't their emotional support. I wasn't the one who should have been sacrificing. I was a person in my own right. I closed my eyes and let the moment sink in. I had broken free. But could I ever truly forgive them? The phone buzzed again. I picked it up without hesitation, but this time, it wasn't my family. It was my lawyer, updating me on the latest development in the legal battle. I felt my heart race as I heard the words, but instead of the familiar weight of fear, there was something else, determination. The judge's ruling came through, my lawyer said. They've dropped the case for now. Your family no longer has any claims to your assets. The words hit me like a flood of relief. I had won. I had finally taken back what was mine. But there was no joy in it. It was just over. It was done. The years of manipulation, the constant battles, gone. But the victory felt hollow. For a brief moment, I was still that girl who had been stuck in the shadows of my family. I was still feeling the pull of guilt, like I was supposed to feel something else. But instead, I just felt empty. I set the phone down and walked over to the window again, looking out at the city. The sunlight was growing brighter now, casting long shadows that stretched across the floor. The world felt so much bigger than I had allowed myself to feel. I had been small for so long, but now, I was here. The whole city seemed to be waiting for me to take my next step, and for the first time in a long time, I felt ready. I had spent so many years trying to be someone they could love. I had molded myself to fit their expectations. But now, it was my turn to define who I was. I could never erase the past, there would always be memories, scars, but I could move forward. And that was enough. I had to let go of the idea of forgiving them. They hadn't asked for my forgiveness. They had manipulated me, taken advantage of my good nature. I wasn't obligated to let them back in. I wasn't obligated to take the scraps of their love anymore. The phone buzzed again, and I grabbed it quickly, hoping it wasn't another message from them. Instead, it was a notification from my bank. I opened it, my stomach tightening, but the message was a reminder of a payment I had made for the new office space I had secured. My new life was beginning, step by step. And this time, there was no one to hold me back. There was no one to demand I give up pieces of myself. I took a deep breath and hit accept on the payment. It wasn't much, just the rent for the first month, but it felt like a declaration. I was taking ownership of my future. For once, I didn't need anyone's permission. I had done this myself. I walked to the front door, looking back at the apartment behind me. This place, this space I had created on my own, was mine. But I wasn't done yet. There was a new path ahead of me. And this time, I was the one choosing it. As I stepped outside, the cool breeze hit me, and for the first time, I felt the world welcoming me. The future was mine, and I would face it with my head held high. Isla's journey isn't just about standing up to her family, it's about standing up for herself. Sometimes, we need to break free from the chains of the past to find our true freedom. But here's the question, what's holding you back? Are you ready to take control of your life, no matter the cost? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to follow the next chapter of life's toughest battles.